Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into parenting styles,
Okay.
more specifically Asian versus Western approaches.
Sounds good.
And before anyone gets any crazy ideas, like picturing a tiger mom with a violin and a stack of textbooks,
Right, right.
let me just say that it's a lot more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
We're not here to pick a side or say one is better, but just to, understand the strengths of each.
Yeah, it is really interesting how cultural values shape how we raise children. Like, for example, Confucianism, which is a philosophy that is super important to lots of Asian cultures,
Right.
emphasizes family harmony, respect for elders, and a strong sense of duty.
Right.
And a lot of times that means a parenting style that puts discipline, working hard, and academic achievement first.
Oh, so it's not just about individual success, but more like the success reflects on the whole family.
Exactly.
Like a group win, kind of.
Yeah, it's like it's a big deal to bring honor to the family name, and this really helps us understand why Asian parenting often has these really high expectations. And the idea that success comes from effort, not just natural talent.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But, while this focus on discipline and achievement can mean awesome grades and stuff,
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder, is there like a downside to this whole pressure cooker thing?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a great question.
Yeah,
And you're right, that much pressure can sometimes be stressful and cause anxiety for kids.
for sure.
It's all about balance,
Yeah.
And, research has actually shown that kids raised with a super strict style, what we call authoritarian,
Okay.
where parents have tons of rules but don't explain them much or show a lot of warmth.
Oh, wow.
They might end up having low self-esteem or trouble making decisions when they're older.
So even if they get good grades at first, that my way or the highway approach may not be the best in the long run.
Exactly. And this brings us to the other side. Western parenting.
Okay.
Here, it's more common to see an emphasis on things like independence, creativity, and emotional well-being.
Okay, so like encouraging kids to be themselves, explore what they like, and learn from messing up.
Exactly. And this approach really fits with the individualistic values that are big in a lot of Western cultures.
Right.
It's all about helping kids feel good about who they are and become independent thinkers.
Now that sounds awesome,
Mm.
super nurturing, but are there any, drawbacks to this way of doing things? Like, can too much freedom and not enough structure backfire sometimes?
That's a great point, and researchers have looked into this a lot.
Okay.
While a more hands-off approach can help with creativity and independence,
Right.
some studies say kids who grow up with very permissive parents,
Okay.
the type who give very few rules or boundaries,
Mhm.
may have a hard time with things like self-discipline and responsibility later on.
Interesting. So it sounds like whether it's Asian or Western parenting, they both have good things and potential problems. So
Yeah.
is there like a magic formula, a perfect balance between these two?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
You see, lots of parents today, especially those from multicultural backgrounds or who just want a more thoughtful approach, are starting to do what we call hybrid parenting.
Oh.
They take a little from both styles and mix it up,
Got it.
creating a blend that fits their family and what their kids need.
So instead of choosing one side or the other, it's more about making a personalized plan, taking the best of both worlds.
Exactly. I love that. Like, for instance, psychologist Diana Baumrind,
Okay.
she came up with a parenting style called authoritative parenting, and it seems to hit that sweet spot.
Okay.
It's all about balancing warmth with clear boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Parents give loving support, but also set high expectations.
Yeah.
And they explain why they have those rules.
Right. So it's not just laying down the law, but like working together so kids feel understood and respected.
Exactly.
I like that.
And the research shows some pretty amazing benefits that come with this style.
Really? Like what?
Like, for instance, children raised by authoritative parents are 3 times more likely to be really good at problem solving by the time they're 10,
Wow.
compared to kids raised in a more strict or more hands-off way.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It really shows you the power of finding that balance between structure and, nurturing. But I'm curious, how do these different styles actually look in real life? Like, are there any specific studies or examples that show how they can shape a kid's development?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Let's dive into that.
Welcome back. Glad to be diving back into this whole parenting styles thing with you.
Yeah, for sure. Last week we talked about how culture plays a part in both Asian and Western parenting. And we even touched on that idea of hybrid parenting,
Right, right.
which really got me thinking, it seems like parents today are moving away from those strict categories and kind of like creating their own personalized approach.
Definitely. It's all about realizing that there's no one right way to raise kids.
Totally.
And this whole hybrid parenting thing is super relevant now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the world is so interconnected, and we see more and more families mixing things up from different cultures and philosophies
Yeah.
to find what works best for their kids.
So it's like they're not stuck in one specific parenting box.
Yeah.
They're mixing it up and making their own blend.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that. But what does that actually look like, in real life?
Good question.
Yeah, like, could you give us some examples?
Sure. Imagine a family that really values education,
Okay.
which is common in a lot of Asian cultures, but they also want their kids to be emotionally healthy and creative.
Got it.
So they might push their kid to do well in math and science,
Okay.
but also give them space to explore art, like painting or music or writing.
So it's not like they have to choose one or the other. Like, be a brainiac or a free spirit. They can be both.
Exactly. And this kind of mixing can lead to really cool results.
Like what?
Well, studies have shown that kids who do creative stuff, like playing an instrument or doing theater,
Okay.
they actually tend to do better in school, too.
Oh, wow. Really?
It's like those creative outlets help them learn problem solving and think outside the box.
That's so interesting. So you don't have to just focus on school to be good at school.
Right.
It sounds like these families are raising kids who are both smart and emotionally aware.
Exactly. And it's not just about academics and creativity.
What else?
These families also find that balance when it comes to discipline.
Okay.
For example, they might have clear rules and expectations, which is typical in Asian parenting.
Yeah.
But they also focus on open communication and empathy, which are big in Western approaches.
So it's not just that because I said so kind of parenting.
Right.
It's more like working together so the kids feel heard and respected.
Exactly. It's about teaching them to respect authority,
Okay.
but also encouraging them to think for themselves and speak their minds.
Right. Yeah.
It's a tough balance, but when it works, it raises kids who are both respectful and independent.
That sounds amazing, but I bet it's not always easy to mix these different styles.
You're right. It can be tough.
What are some of the challenges these families face?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is finding that sweet spot between different values and expectations. It takes a lot of self-awareness for the parents to really see their own cultural biases
Yeah.
and be open to other perspectives.
So like being able to see past your own upbringing and stuff.
Exactly.
And I bet communication is huge too.
Oh, definitely.
Like everyone needs to be on the same page for this to work.
Absolutely. And hybrid parenting isn't like a set recipe.
Right.
It's a process that always needs tweaking and adjusting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What works for a little kid might not work for a teenager. So parents have to be ready to change their strategies as their kids grow up.
Sounds like it takes a growth mindset, not just for the kids, but for the parents too.
Exactly. It's all about being open to learning, trying new things, and figuring out what works for your family.
So it's less about rules and more about being a thoughtful parent
Yeah.
who creates an environment where their kids feel loved and supported.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's also important to remember that no matter what style we lean towards, we're all just doing our best with what we know.
Right.
There's no such thing as a perfect parent, and that's okay.
I love that. It's like taking the pressure off
Yeah.
and just focusing on making a home where our kids feel safe to be themselves.
Exactly. It's about embracing the good and the bad parts of being a parent
Yeah.
and celebrating who our kids are becoming.
Okay, now I'm curious. How do you see this whole hybrid parenting thing changing in the future? Do you think it'll become even more common as the world gets more and more connected?
That's a great question, and I think it's definitely here to stay.
Yeah.
As our world becomes more diverse and global, we're going to see even more families mixing parenting styles,
Okay.
taking wisdom from different cultures and traditions.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
Yeah.
And it seems like this could not only help families, but also make society more understanding and inclusive.
I couldn't agree more. When we expose our kids to different ways of thinking and being,
Yeah.
we help them develop empathy, tolerance, and a bigger worldview.
Right. And that's something we definitely need more of these days.
For sure.
This has been such a great conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of parenting styles.
Me too. It's been awesome exploring these ideas with you.
But before we wrap up, I want to hear your thoughts on the long-term effects of these different styles.
Okay.
Like, how do these early experiences shape kids as they become adults?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I guess that's something to explore next time. All right, welcome back, everyone, for the last part of our deep dive into Asian and Western parenting.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
We've talked about a lot, the cultural side of things, the good and the bad of each approach,
Right.
and those really interesting hybrid styles that lots of families are using these days.
Yeah, it's been great. And I'm excited to finish up by looking at what all this means in the long run.
Okay.
Like, how do these different ways of parenting actually shape kids as they become adults?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
It is. Researchers have been looking into this for years, and there are some pretty cool findings.
Okay, so let's start with Asian parenting.
All right.
We talked about all that emphasis on discipline and hard work, especially in school.
Right.
So does that mean those kids grow up to be super successful, like always on top of everything?
Well, it's not that straightforward. While lots of kids raised with those values do achieve some amazing things in their careers and lives,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a guarantee, and research shows it's more complicated than that.
Okay, I'm curious. What do you mean by complicated?
For example, some studies show that adults who grew up with really strict Asian parenting
Okay.
might be more likely to have anxiety or be perfectionists.
Oh, wow.
They might have trouble setting boundaries or even just sharing their feelings.
That makes sense, I guess, if you're always trying to meet these super high expectations.
Right.
It could really affect your mental health.
Exactly. And it shows how important balance is, even in a parenting style that's all about discipline. It's so important for parents to make sure their kids feel loved and accepted for who they are.
Yeah, not just for what they achieve.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's talk about the long-term effects of Western parenting.
All right, let's do it.
We've talked about how it focuses on independence, creativity, and expressing your emotions.
Right.
So how do those values play out in adulthood?
Yeah, like do they become these super emotionally in tune adults?
Well, research shows that people raised that way, with a focus on emotions, often have really good people skills. They're good communicators, great listeners, and they know how to build strong relationships.
So they've got this like built-in advantage when it comes to connecting with people.
Exactly. Which is super valuable, both personally and at work.
Totally. But are there any potential downsides to this that might show up later in life?
That's a good point. While this style encourages independence and being yourself,
Yeah.
some studies say those raised with very few rules or expectations might have a hard time with self-discipline or taking responsibility for their actions.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So it seems like no matter what the style is, finding that balance is super key.
absolutely. It's not about being super strict or super lenient,
Right.
but finding that middle ground where kids feel supported and challenged.
Makes sense. And that reminds me of hybrid parenting.
Yes?
You know how we talked about parents blending Asian and Western approaches? Well, what does the research say about that style long term?
Early research is really promising.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Some studies show that adults who are raised this way seem to have high levels of both achievement and well-being.
Wow, so like the best of both worlds.
Exactly. They seem to be able to handle challenges at work and in life
Hmm.
with resilience, emotional intelligence, and a strong sense of purpose.
That's incredible. It really shows you the power of customizing your approach to parenting,
Right.
taking what works from different philosophies and making it fit your family's values.
Exactly. It all comes down to creating a loving and supportive home where kids feel safe to explore, learn, and become the best version of themselves.
I love that. It's such a great reminder that there's no one right answer.
Yeah,
It's about being flexible, learning as you go, and celebrating who your kids are.
absolutely. Parenting is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. It's about enjoying the good times, learning from the tough ones, and cheering on our kids as they grow.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
And to everyone listening, remember, you're doing great.
You got this.
Keep learning, keep those conversations going, and enjoy the ride of parenthood.
Until next time.